is Outland Entertainment, and we are at Planet Comicon 2021. We had so many of our wonderful authors and artists, some of them local, but some of them even fly in from the edges of the nation. This is Shannon Potratz.
Correct.
Yes. And he's actually hailing from, don't tell me, Washington.
Yes.
Tacoma?
No, not that far.
Seattle.
Not that far west. So
the other one, the other city that is the only other city I know, but can't think of. What is it?
Spokane.
Spokane, Washington. So he's from Spokane, Washington. God, thank you so much for coming to Comic-Con.
Oh, thank you. It's been awesome. I've loved every minute here. So
good. It's you've definitely added to the whole aesthetic, and also the great times that we've had. This is day 3.
It's fantastic group of people. I mean, it feels like friends I've known for 10 years. So
yeah, I feel like we all did really mesh really well.
Yeah.
So and yet all also be unique.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
Jeremy and I have known each other for almost 20 years.
Really?
Yeah, but this is only the second time I've gotten to see him in person. So it's great to kind of catch up with him again. So
yeah, our editor-in-chief Alana Jolie Abbott, I should say her whole name.
Yeah.
She said she hadn't even seen his face until we did a video conference a year ago.
Oh, really?
And she's worked with him for 7 years or 12 years or something like that. A really long time.
Yeah.
So that's it's weird. This is a weird age that we live in.
Well, yeah, COVID kind of it's certainly changed everything for everybody.
Yeah.
So we're all in kind of the same situation where we want to get out, but we also know that we got to get through this, and so we got to do what we do to get through it. So.
Yeah, take care of everybody.
Yeah.
I find it interesting. This is totally not what I expected this conversation to go like, but I found it interesting. I've made a lot of friends the last year and a half, and none of them live near me.
Right.
Like you. I mean, we're different because we didn't become friends until Friday. But you know what I'm saying? Like, we had met each other online, and all my friends live all over the world now, which is really cool.
Well, it's, most of my clientele over the last 20 years has mostly been through email. Mm-hmm. So as far as my work goes, it didn't really change how I work necessarily, because it's still deal through email. And of course, Jeremy and I have worked. I've done a lot of work for Jeremy over the last, 10, 15 years, and all of that's been, online. So a lot of that hasn't changed, but I've certainly met other people, other artists and stuff that I've kind of, since COVID happened, it's like a lot of my social interaction went to those friends that I had online and not so much the friends I have in person. So
well, you have more in common with them. Like you can be friends with people who are your people instead of... I mean, and there's disadvantages to it too, but instead of like trying to make things work or trying to find that commonality, like it's just easier to be friends with people who have the same interests and passions and knowledge, so that you can have the same conversations that you're passionate about.
Well, when I got here and met everybody here, sitting down, and we all kind of just slipped into this groove where we all knew the same artists and writers and, kind of into the same kind of...
And the shows.
Yeah, the shows and the comics and the books and stuff like that. We are all, we all kind of spoke the same language. And so it was just fun to kind of just slip into that groove and, and it was, there was no effort in the conversation. It just was natural. So.
And you don't have to do the whole getting to know you and then finding something in common through that conversation. It was, okay, we got these things in common, and we're getting to know each other through those conversations, which is, that's so much fun. Anyway, so one of the things we would like to do is talk to you about your art. And your experience, and if you have anything that you can offer to maybe budding artists or even writers, since you're on the other side of the writing artist relationship, or I mean, just we can make this go wherever it needs to go. But I do want to point out that you are the artist for our Dragonring series,
Correct.
Which I did not bring. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Okay.
So this is the Dragonring. This is the preview comic.
Right.
And you saw this for the first time on Thursday.
Because Jeremy just got just got them in from into print on Thursday, and I was pretty tickled to see it in print. Mm-hmm. It's so different seeing it on paper. I'm so used to looking at it on my monitor. Everything looks bigger on my monitor because I'm zoomed in on everything, you know. So all the little things that kind of drive me nuts about it is what stands out. When I see it in print, everything is shrunk down to the size you're actually supposed to read it. So just
imagine
everything looks
this
sharper.
Is what he sees. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you got to hold it in your hands. Plus, there's that's the tangible thing
I think
too. Like you can touch the art.
It suddenly became real when I could actually flip through it. It's like now it's real. It's actually happened. So it's exciting to see it in print.
Yeah. Oh, I mean. I haven't spent a lot of time with it, sorry.
That's okay.
But I just noticed that you've got this interesting texture over it.
Right, yeah. And that's something,
it gives it that vintage look.
Digital, I love vintage. Of course I grew up with...
I don't know if you can see it on the camera or not, but... yeah, I don't know if they can see
the texture.
Yeah.
It's hard to see on this camera, but... I love vintage comics, and when I flip through, when you look at an art piece, especially when you look at an original piece, you see all the texture of the paper in the art, and it loses some of that when it goes to print. So when I'm painting digitally, I like to incorporate a lot of textures in there, and even some halftones. I mean, the halftones kind of come out of my love of that old 4-color printing on the old vintage pages, where you actually see the dots. We live in an age of digital printing where everything is just nice and sharp. So it's taken kind of that the impurities in the old vintage comics. It's kind of taken that away. So I like to bring a little of that back when I'm working on my stuff. So
I have a little bit of background in printing.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Something else is like we've got a lot more glossies.
Right.
And with the paper, especially the type of paper that vintage comics were printed on, it caused the inks to spread.
Yeah, there was always a little bit of bleed
dots.
Because they printed on an old newsprint, and you print on that, and that ink bleeds a little bit. So you don't get the really sharp lines because they're just a little bit fuzzy, So.
And it reminds me of you were talking about illustrating digitally on your pad or a tablet or whatever, and how it makes a really sharp line, and you lose the character, the personality of the line, the lack of control even.
Well, there's
which makes it beautiful.
There's that there's unpredictability in drawing on actual paper, which is why I still like to draw on paper. I'll paint digitally, but I'll draw it on paper first and scan it, because there's a certain quality that the paper itself brings to it that you can't anticipate, and it leaves a certain edge to the line. There's a certain tooth to the paper and a kind of a resistance to the paper. When I'm drawing there on a Cintiq, there's no resistance. It feels like you're drawing on ice, So the paper gives that little bit of resistance, and I like that. Maybe it's comforting for me, I suppose, too. But I like paper.
I think there's probably a little bit of, for me. There's a little bit of fear in the idea of ultimate control. Like I like to have the resistance. I like to be stopped here so that I can go this way, and I like to improvise, and I like to work within things. I mean, of course, I don't want to be completely constrained. That's not fun.
Right.
But I feel like it brings out creativity when you have to adjust to the things around you, as opposed to just like, making it all up from nothing, so that I can imagine that resistance of the paper being like,
a little bit.
that's a beautiful thing.
When it fights you a little bit, that's part of it. I guess that's part of the process. If it fights you a little bit. Because sometimes you come up with you come up with something you didn't expect when you're sort of forced to work with the limitations of the materials themselves, and that yields some pretty fun results, too.
So I wonder. It just makes me wonder because I have a painting. I'm not like a artist, but I do art.
Yeah.
But I have a painting that I used my grandmother's old crappy craft paints, and I would mix them with the like nicer artist grade acrylics with the red. So I mixed all those colors with the red so that there was this harmony, and then I painted it, but it became its own thing.
Right.
So do you ever do anything besides drawing on paper, like you mentioned? Do you ever do anything that like limits you so that you can work within that creativity?
You mean with the materials or
whatever, like anything, like saying I mean, there are some natural limits.
Yeah.
Your materials, your paper, that sort of thing.
Right.
But do you ever like force yourself to only work within this?
Yeah, sometimes. There's I actually have a couple of exercises in some of the sketchbooks I carry around. There's times when I'll sit down, I'll do a sketch, and I say, okay, I'm not going to use an eraser. I'm not going to erase anything. Every line I put down stays, And so, and not every line you put down is perfect, and not every line is where you want it, and so sometimes I force myself to just say, all right, work with it and work around it if you have to. And that kind of pushes you out of your comfort zone a little bit. And I talked about that in a portfolio review yesterday about being pushed outside of your comfort zone. It's hard to always do it for yourself, and sometimes it takes an exterior force to kind of force you out of that, whether that's working with somebody, working with a writer and the script they write, and they write down something in the script that says, I don't want to draw that, but you have to. It's part of the assignment.
Kind of your
Yeah.
job.
So those things are good for you. I think they make you a better artist, and they push you in directions that you don't always want to go, but I think the end result makes you better. And everything I do, every time I do it, I want to be better the next time, so.
That's great. One of my favorite things to do on like social media is to see artists drawing, and I love it because their first drawing is like, sometimes it's really like okay, so we invented a character called Rockabilly Werewolf that we may see it later. Yeah. And so the first sketch you did with your blue lines, like, I could not do that my first time. But a lot of artists, like, the first sketch with their blue lines is like, it's dumb looking, or it's just shapes. And then you see it come to life, and it's like gradually, but there's a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of erasing and redoing and redoing and redoing.
It's always, I think of drawing as almost sculpting, and I've done a lot of that too, and you're sculpting the piece on paper, with a pencil, and it's the same principle. You're working the clay, only, it just happens to be pencil lines, and same kind of thing. And then there's different ways of cleaning it up on that one. I could kind of I knew I was going to be inking it. I knew I was going to throw ink over the top of it, so I wasn't worried too much about the blue lines. Well,
it's Rockabilly Werewolf. It's going to have ink.
Right, yeah, exactly. It has to be. You got to have that stark contrast with Rockabilly. So, so I knew the lines were going to be kind of messy. And the ink, you come back with the ink and you clean all that up. So the blue line is just the construction, and then the ink is where it really kind of starts to pop. So.
Yeah. So I like it. I like watching those videos because it reminds me, it's a metaphor in practice, that it doesn't have to be perfect the first time.
Right.
You can keep working on it. You can adjust. You can, and in most things in life, you can erase or smudge, and redo it.
Well, we were talking the other night about digital painting and about how the great thing about digital painting is that you can always rework it. So that's also the drawback to digital painting, is that you can always rework it.
And you probably will.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
At some point you have to say, all right, it's done. Because you got to move on at some point. The assignment's got to be done, because the work never gets done if you're always tweaking it. So.
Cool. Anything else you want to share with us about art? We could talk a little bit about Dragonring, since that's what we're doing.
That's true. Well, Dragonring, as you know, is a comic property from the late '80s, part of the Barry Blair Library.
Again, the textures that you added over that, like harkening back to that.
They kind of go back to that old vintage newsprint that stuff was printed on, for sure.
And by the way, we have those available. So a lot of the Barry Blair Aircel comics are available on Drive-Thru Comics and our website.
Yeah.
We're loading them gradually, but
you're right.
I don't think Dragonring's
I don't
available
think
yet.
I don't think the original Dragon Rings are available yet, but we're cleaning up all that old art and getting it on there. So yeah.
Anyway, so go ahead. What were you saying? It's a vintage 80s comic.
So it's a kind of I don't want to say reboot because it doesn't exactly discard that old stuff. It actually kind of builds on to what those old stories were. The main character in this book is actually the daughter of the main character in the original comic. So it's kind of a quasi sequel, but spun in a whole new way and kind of redone for a modern audience. And it's been a lot of fun to work on. Cullen, we talked about it in our panel yesterday that he kind of gives me loose descriptions, and even he has a different picture in his head of what the characters are going to be like. And then when I show it to him, he's like, "Oh yeah, that's great," And it's cool because there's kind of a collaborative process. So he's kind of the one who's engineering this whole, reboot of the Barry Blair library, but there's also a collaborative process where I get to bring something to it as well, So in that sense, it sort of becomes our shared thing, where it's not just his and it's not just mine, but that's the excitement of working on a project together. Where good world building, I think, takes kind of a partnership between the people involved.
I would even say that can be one of those resistance things too.
Yeah.
Like working with somebody is to create something great. That resistance is good, but it's accountability too. It's
Absolutely.
challenging. It's not restricting.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be, at least.
Well, the last page of issue 1, we've gone through like 3 different versions of that page because it's kind of the big hook that grabs everybody at the end of the story, and we really want to get that right. And so we're sitting there and we're kind of knocking stuff back and forth, trying to figure out what's going to make this, what's going to make this really grab people. So I've drawn that page like 3 different times on the last page, and I'm actually okay with it because I wasn't very happy with the first, couple of versions either, and I want it to be as good as everybody else, So, and something like that, I didn't actually. A lot of times, revisions like that can be frustrating for an artist. But in this case, on something like that, I want it to be good too because I want this work is a reflection of myself as much as it's a reflection of Cullen. So
absolutely, yeah.
We all want it to be good, and we all want it to be great. So at the end of the day, I think that's the most important part is put out a product we're all proud of. So.
Yeah, cool. And we recorded the panel, so hopefully the quality was good, and that will be posted eventually somewhere elsewhere.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I want to see that panel, it may be available. And Dragonring will be on Kickstarter soon as of this recording. So if it's on Kickstarter, go look for it. Otherwise, come to our website, outlandentertainment.com. Go to comics, you'll find the Dragonring comics, you can order the preview, and then you can, at that time, either go to the Kickstarter from the other page or pre-order it or order it, depending on when you watch this video.
Right.
So tell us about what else is going on in your work. Like, what else are you working on besides Dragonring?
Well, I do a lot of RPG work, and just a lot of freelance illustration. So I'm always... I'm also going to be developing a game with Outland that was just in the embryonic stage of that right now. Called
Through the Dragonring?
No, it's actually a separate world. It's actually my own creator-owned thing. It's also called Glibben's Keep.
Okay.
And we're very early stages of that. I've already got some concept art that I've had over the last couple of years. And it just kind of gets pushed back behind all the other work, personal projects do. But we're going to finally dive into it, and we've handed it over to some game developers with Outland who are going to start working on it. And I've already got some concept work done for it, and some world building that I'm excited to do on that. And I'm actually going to be sculpting the game pieces myself. It's going to be a miniatures game, and I'm actually going to be sculpting the game pieces myself. So I'm very excited to get back into that because
I didn't know.
I created.
As the marketing person, person, I don't hear about stuff until it's like almost
right.
done. So
You're right,
really
and
cool.
we're obviously not at that marketing stage yet, but we're jumping in, and I kind of created this out of the desire to kind of get back into sculpting, because used to do it a lot more, and the demands of my job just kind of pushed me away from that, and so this was sort of an excuse for me to kind of jump into that, and I proposed it to Jeremy, the creator of Outland, and he said, "Yeah, let's go for it," So
that's very cool.
So I'm excited to work on that, and I'm excited to. Game development's new for me, so I'm excited to work with the developers on it and see what they bring to it. So
yeah, that's super fun. Cool.
So.
That's exciting. Glad you're going to be around for a while.
Yep.
And then social media, where can people follow you?
They can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm Art of Shannon Potratz on Instagram. That's probably the best place. With art _ of Shannon. _ Shannon Potratz. I can't ever remember my tags. I don't look at them, so.
And you have a website?
I do have a website. I'm reworking the website, but they can find me on ArtStation and DeviantArt. So.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us, and thank you for coming to the con.
Yeah.
And it's been fun.
Yeah,
Super fun.
it has been. Thanks for sitting down and talking to me.